Hello everyone. Today we will continue to look at the content of H3A Cloud Computing. We have already introduced some basic concepts of virtualization, so today we will briefly introduce the history of virtualization development, starting from which technologies, developing to the technologies we are currently using. First, let's start from the last century. Right? You probably didn't expect that the development of virtualization started so early. Indeed, computers themselves only began in the last century. The first time the concept of virtualization appeared was actually in 1964, very early, right? At that time, computers had only been around for a few years. Initially, it was the blue giant IBM that began experimenting with virtualization on mainframes. How big were these mainframes? They weighed several tons, even tens of tons, right? At that time, computers were calculated in tons and tens of tons, right? Back then, computers were bulky, expensive, and rare devices. They were mainly used in fields like scientific research and the military. Well, of course, IBM was just experimenting at that time. However, this experiment actually planted a seed of virtualization under the vast sky of computer technology until 1972. It was in 1972 that IBM officially named the time-sharing system of our System 370 as a virtual machine. This naming was actually very important. From this point on, the concept of the virtual machine was formally given a clear definition in the field of computing. It was like giving virtualization its true name. It was from this time that the concept of virtualization truly began to exist. And from then on, the virtual machine actually gained an identity in the world of technology. From this point on, virtual machines began to be used. However, most companies didn't use them much, not until 1999. This time span is very long. During this period, few companies actually tried this aspect. It was not until 1999 that we launched VMware, which was first available on x86, virtualization product on the x86 architecture. The x86 architecture is one of the more widely used architectures in the computers we use daily. This move actually opened the door to a new world. This allowed virtualization technology to move from the realm of large-scale economic fields, to more widespread ordinary computer application scenarios. Because before this, IBM mainly focused on large computers, and their functions were centered around scientific research and military fields. It wasn't until 1999 that it gradually shifted towards our enterprise and commonly seen small to medium-sized enterprises, as well as some personal scenarios. At this time, we could implement virtualization on some x86 computers, which greatly lowered the application threshold for virtualization technology. Until this. In 2002, Xcine was officially open-sourced, and once it was open-sourced, this technology was open to the entire world. After the release of versions 1.0 and 2.0, it began to be used as a virtualization solution by some common systems, such as Red Hat. It was integrated into top Linux distributions. And at this point, virtualization software was already integrated into our real operating systems. By the year 2004, Intel engineers began adding hardware virtualization support to Xcine. This move was actually very important, because the Windows system was actually used quite a lot at the time, relatively speaking. Especially on a personal level, it was used extensively. At that time, when hardware virtualization support was added to Xcine, this action greatly contributed to the development of virtualization technology. In order to make our X1 virtual machine run better, by 2005, the officially released version 3.0 began to support Intel's VT technology and the IA64 architecture, allowing the Xcine virtual machine to run on completely unmodified operating systems. This greatly expanded its range of applications. By 2006, another very important virtualization technology emerged, which is KVM. Currently, our application scenarios are very, very broad. And at the same time, it has already been incorporated into the Linux kernel in many Linux distributions now. Some KVM code is integrated by default. The deployment of KVM is relatively simple, which means that you need to install some management tools and then you can use it directly because it has already been integrated into the system. This is actually corner leveraging a feature of Linux. Thanks to its widespread influence, it has experienced rapid development and gained a significant market share. In the following stages, we will, from 2006 to 2010. During this period, major IT vendors have successively launched their own products in the field of virtualization. In 2007, for example, HP launched its own virtual machine, while Microsoft included Hyper-V virtualization in Windows Server 2008. This virtualization can also be seen in the current Windows 10 and Windows 11 versions. This virtualization, actually, relatively speaking, it is quite mature, but it conflicts with VMware. The Hyper-V virtualization conflicts with VMware virtualization. If you've used some virtualization software before, especially if you have, you would know, right? When we use it, we need to disable one virtualization software because there will be some conflicts between different virtualization software as they use some overlapping technologies. In short, all the vendors are working on virtualization, which has led to the rapid development of virtualization, and it has become increasingly diverse. By the year 2010, Red Hat released the RHL Board 6 version. This version directly integrated the KVM virtual machine, completely replaced the old version of XN. From this point on, KVM began to dominate the market, especially in the field of server virtualization. Starting in 2011, major companies like IBM, Red Hat, HP, and Intel established an open virtualization alliance. Together, they accelerated the promotion of KVM. The joint action of multiple industry giants has actually formed a powerful synergy, leading to the current situation where if you want to do cloud computing, what is used at the underlying level, the main technology used is primarily KVM, or some versions that are secondary developments based on KVM. After all, we are open source, and it supports secondary development. By 2013, virtualization underwent a qualitative change. It was no longer just a simple virtual machine. In 2013, Docker emerged. Docker is actually a very important milestone in the development of virtualization. It introduced a completely new and comprehensive system and an ecosystem for container management. This includes a layered container image model, a set of global and local registries, and a complete command line interface, among other things. Docker is actually a very convenient container, and it is different from traditional virtualization. It is completely different and more refined and streamlined. For the installation of some specific services overall, Docker's installation speed is definitely the fastest among all installation methods. Why? Because it already has integrated some services directly into certain system images, and within this system image, there is only this one service. Moreover, the system is a streamlined version, making deployment relatively fast. From this point, virtualization has essentially split into two tracks. One is traditional virtualization, and the other is container virtualization with Docker. Moving forward from there, what happened was, what appeared? Rocket was launched, initially developed by CoreOS, specifically to address some of the shortcomings in Docker. Of course, its goal was to exceed the requirements in terms of security and production capability, but actually, in terms of containers, of course, there are now many different types of containers, and it's already a flourishing scene. So up to this point, virtualization and containers are both continuing to develop gradually, but they have essentially split into two distinct technologies. So, moving forward, when you're learning, it's best to study virtualization and Docker separately, rather than mixing them together. This is essentially the overall development history of virtualization technology. If anyone is interested in Huawei's cognitive technology or wants to access the Washington Question Bank, please send me a private message. I can also engage in technical discussions in the comments below the video. That's it for today, everyone.